In the first of our rider tips for 2009, we're going to tackle something aimed specifically for you racers out there. Now, everybody loves flat corners when you first start riding. They're relatively easy to get around and they try to avoid the ruts and the deep berms because obviously they're a little bit trickier. However, once you get to a certain level, and particularly once you start racing, those berms and ruts become, a little bit more of your friend. The flat corners become quite difficult. So today, what we're going to have a bit of a look at is trying to take you to the next level in your flat corners. Now there's a heap of different things that we can look at with your flat corners, covering all of the basics. Specifically what we're going to be working on today is completely changing your attitude towards flat corners. That'll see you not only change your line a bit, but carry a lot more speed through the mid and exit of your corner. First thing we need to consider here is what I call the typical dirt bike rider's attitude, and I put myself in the same category. What we tend to do is we go for the shortest line possible on the track. Rather than thinking ahead and setting up a line selection, we go straight up the inside and we drift wide coming out of corners. Now what that does is it puts us in the biggest braking bumps coming into the corner and also the biggest acceleration bumps coming out of the corner. Today we're going to take a little bit of a look at the benefits of either drifting going into a corner or leaving that drift to coming out of the corner. And what we're going to work on today is coming in a little bit faster, drifting coming into the entry of the corner, and that'll allow us to exit nice and straight, fast and smooth. Now the key things we need to remember here. First of all is entry speed. If you don't come in fast enough, it's impossible to pitch that bike into a bit of a drift. You can jump on your back brake and try to make it slide. However, if you don't have enough momentum, the back's not going to step out for you. Now the second thing we need to consider is timing. When and how much brake you're supposed to put on. You've got to be very careful with your front brake. Depending on how much traction you've got in the dirt, we use just a tiny little bit of front brake with a dab of the back brake. Now whatever you do, don't lock up the back brake, or you could find the back end steps right out to the side and you could be on the deck before you know it. Just a little bit of back brake, a slight little dab, by leaning the bike over at the same time is enough to pitch it into that nice little drift. Now once you get really experienced at this, we should be aiming for roughly 40 to 45 degrees out to the side. Now halfway down the straight, you already need to be thinking about when you're going to get on that back brake, because if you get on it too early, you'll completely miss the apex of the corner. Likewise, if you get on it too late, you'll completely wreck your line selection and you'll end up drifting wide all the way through the corner. So timing is very important. Now the two sections to this particular drill is your first half and your last half of the corner. The first half involves you drifting, getting on the brakes at the right time, all your timing, etc. The second half is your acceleration, where you start to roll it on, making sure your body position's right, and the key factor here is making sure the bike doesn't drift sideways on you coming out of the corner. The safest way to practice this is to do it nice and easy to start with. However, you need to remember you need a certain amount of entry speed coming into this corner, otherwise it's not going to step out to the side. The next thing we need to discuss is body position. Now let's first of all start with your entry, pitching it into a drift coming into the corner. Always remember, if you start to bring your upper body slightly to the inside, it's going to help that back end step out a little bit for you, which is going to aid in the drift going into the corner. However, if you pick it back up, your upper body moving to the outside of the bike, that'll control the slide and bring it back a little bit. So likewise, think of your upper body as a counterweight that controls your slide. Now unfortunately for you guys, the only way you're going to get the hang of this is by practicing. You go on feel. Literally 1 centimetre dragging your head to the inside of the corner, most of the time will eventuate in that back wheel stepping out about 1 centimetre to the outside. So be very careful and don't do any rapid movements with that upper body. Once you've got that right, and only once you've got your entry right, I want you to start to work on the exit of the corner. Try to think of your throttle. The more you twist the throttle, the more you need to force yourself to the outside of the bike. This is critical if you want to exit the corner without some massive drift coming out. Now the last thing we need to touch on here in this particular drill is your power, and more importantly, just how much you twist that throttle. Now anything to do with flat corners, you always have to try to be as smooth as possible. But there's a lot of different factors to be brought into consideration. Do you have a lot of grip, a lot of traction out there, or is it a little bit wet, a little bit slippery? That determines how much throttle you can use. No matter what, even in perfect circumstances when you've got a lot of traction, you always must be progressive with your throttle, not just snap it on. That'll always eventuate in the bike stepping out to the side. Always be smooth with your throttle application. And remember guys, while this particular drill does have a bit of technique involved with it, it's mainly about feel. So always remember, if you want to get better, practice, practice, practice. We'll see you next time.